Ultimately, the best way that we find to get opportunities and get the right opportunities is through networking and talking with people. A person can apply to 1,000 jobs in 5 minutes with an AI bot now. Update your LinkedIn profile to match your resume. So all of your accomplishments, make sure the job titles and the dates and the companies match your resume. And I got sober in February of 2013. So I just hit 11 years of sobriety. And the hardest thing was to ask for help, to put that ego, put that ego aside and say, listen, I got a problem and I need some help.
Today's guest is David Lawrence, and I'm excited to have this conversation. We have not met in person before, so we've come to this cold, but there's things that struck out to me about David while I reached out to him, and that was his experience in recruitment and the industry of multifamily and real estate. There are so many things that we can share with you in this conversation, not just professional, but personal too. So let's just jump in and welcome David. David, hello, how are you?
Hey, James, I'm doing great. Yourself?
Good, good, good. And I know we're pretty co-located. I'm in the DFW Metroplex. I think you are too. Is that right?
No, we're based in the Houston area.
Ah, you're down in Houston. Okay, well, I get that wrong. Texas. We can say we're co-located globally in
It's a
Texas.
small space. Don't worry
Yeah.
about it.
So kick off. We were talking in the green room before we came on air here about some of the challenges that you see in the recruiting marketplace now, so the global marketplace. I'd love to start there with some of your professional background and your skill sets, and also maybe we can give some advisory to people. But why don't you just tell us a little bit about what you've been doing, maybe just that last couple of years post-pandemic, and what you've been seeing in the global workforce that may have changed?
I've been recruiting since 2012. Started in the healthcare field. We were doing back office, administrative staffing, temporary staffing roles.
Yeah.
And then I switched into the real estate area in January of 2014. So for a little over 10 years, been working with a company called South Coast Partners, and we've specialized in the real estate space and working on really direct hire, permanent type roles that start. It could be anywhere from recent college graduates, mid-level, upper-level management placements. And I mean, I can tell you from when I started in 2012, it was a completely different workforce time than it is today. And it's trending kind of back there, but unemployment was 10%, 8% in 2012. And for the last 5 years, it's been under 4%. So it's been a really tighter job market in the last 5 years than it historically has been ever. And with that, we've kind of seen a little bit on the candidate side, specifically of people not taking as much time because they didn't have to. It wasn't as competitive in terms of the resume and the LinkedIn profile and interviewing, communication skills. We've kind of seen a little bit of a drop off overall in general, not with everybody, but in general on some of these skill types. So I like discussing and trying to help people with those particular skills, because I do think it's very beneficial for everybody, and ultimately you can get more money and you can get a better job opportunity.
Well, you're in the right place, and this is great. Going to help people. I got this little mantra, and I want to talk about maybe the first two parts of this mantra on this conversation. Then we'll dive into some personal stuff, because I think you and I have both been through personal angst around, what does it take to be a successful executive. So we'll dive into that. But here's my mantra for recruitment and global workforce, and for people who are either out of work right now or seeking a different opportunity, whether that's inside your organization or elsewhere. Here's what I play out is: find opportunities, be awesome, have fun, and be patient. And everything you just said there, I think it's going to be really helpful, useful if we focus on how do people find opportunities and what are they doing right or wrong right now? And then how can they be awesome in the practice of going through conversations and relationship building, as well as then the interview processes, offer negotiation, and so on. What can you share with us that I think would be able to hit home with some of these folks?
Ultimately, the best way that we find to get opportunities and get the right opportunities is through networking and talking with people. No matter if you're actively looking for a job or you're perfectly happy in your current role, you never know what's going to happen too. And so networking is key. And the best jobs come from referrals. The best candidates we find come from referrals. You know these people, say you've known them for 10 years. I mean, you know what kind of work ethic they have, what kind of attitude they have. So ultimately, I mean, and people like to hire people they know, whether we like it or not, it's just human nature. Constantly be networking is the number one thing I would say to get opportunities and to be awesome in your current role, no matter what you're doing. Because people do see,
Oh
they
yeah.
see, your current workforce or your current company and coworkers see you being awesome, and other people, competitors, notice it as well.
But I love what you said about this networking piece. I actually think people are doing it wrong. Maybe you can comment on that. But we're seeing if somebody is well connected and building relationships or investing as relationship capital, and they're bolting onto that conversations with executive recruiters, that's a 90% chance of finding yourself in the employment or the position that you're looking for. Whereas personal connection might give you another 8 or 9%. But the one where I think people are thinking about this the wrong way right now is that the advertised market is actually pretty small, but also the success rates in there are less than 1%. So if you're scrolling job boards and applying online, the reality is that's the least likely way that you'll find the opportunity that is right for you. I'm not saying that people don't win there, they do, but I am saying I don't think that's right typically for most of the things. So you mentioned
Right.
there about finding opportunities and that people can be awesome in their current role, but what kind of things do you see that there are missteps going on right now that maybe you could point people to do action wise? What can they take action on?
Well, yeah, and you're absolutely right with the job postings, because even AI now, there's AI bots. A person can apply to 1,000 jobs in 5 minutes with an AI bot now. But yes, I mean, talking with recruiters can ultimately help your chances of getting that role, because recruiters work on confidential roles that might not be posted at all. I work on jobs right now that aren't posted on a job board, but we reach out to people directly that we know first, and then we go on LinkedIn or other networking. We do multifamily roles a lot, so we go on multifamily events to look for candidates specifically. But take those recruiter calls when they do reach out, because you never know, and they may be working on jobs that aren't posted, and also other supervisors or other owners or founders, anybody that you can meet within your industry, the better you're going to have, that you're going to be the first person they think of too when they need somebody.
Yeah, that's key. I was just about to say that you've got to put your name on the tip of the tongue of somebody. And the only way to do that is to be having regular contact, following up with those folks. And so I often ask people, when was the last time you spoke to the recruiter that I introduced you to? And they say, oh, just the time when you introduced us. And I said, okay, how many people do you think he or she spoke to since then? Because
Yeah.
their names are on the tip of the tongue, and it's important, that follow-up piece. Now, you mentioned LinkedIn. So I'd love to get your perspectives on what are some of the kind of missteps there, or places where people can level up on LinkedIn, so that I'm not of a huge belief that everybody has to go out and do a personal branding campaign, but I do think there are things to do in LinkedIn, and maybe you can give us your insights about what you think is most important.
Yeah, well, updating your profile is, is very important. Having a professional photo, you can use AI to get a professional photo now, or you can hire a professional photographer and get a professional photo. It's worth it. Also, you can update your LinkedIn profile to match your resume. So all of your accomplishments, make sure the job titles and the dates and the companies match your resume, because people do see that. And if they don't match, then the hiring manager, it pulls up red flag. If the dates match or the job titles, mismatch, you can put it in your accomplishments on your LinkedIn profile. And you can also put in different skill sets and different certifications and update all of that information. I use LinkedIn a lot if I don't know them already personally. And the other thing too, I've had founders and owners send me people's LinkedIn profile. Hey, David, can you please reach out to this person? And the way they send that person to me is like in an email with their LinkedIn profile. It's very useful nowadays. And if you're not on LinkedIn, then by all means get on LinkedIn. But if you are, certainly update your profile. And if you're not working too, like if you haven't been working in 3 months, update that profile to show that you're not working. I mean, a lot of people don't, especially now there's been a lot of layoffs, COVID, all of these different areas. People understand if you're not working.
I don't think that's a point of shame, and if you're feeling shameful about that, folks, that's just a little bit of anger towards yourself. You could let that stuff go because
Yeah,
the rest of the world wants to know that you're available. And you can do
right.
that by kind of putting in some of the projects you're working on that may not be inside an organization, but shows you're still valuable. And I love what you're saying there about putting all of those skills, certifications, all of that activity is valuable to someone. But if it's not there, they can't, we're not mind readers. I think
Right.
people can't guess what your value is if they don't see it. And so I love that. And I also love what you said about consistency of resume to LinkedIn profile. And it prompts a question for me because I have mixed emotions about this. People who put their LinkedIn profile on their resume, what do you think about that? Do you think that's a good practice?
I don't think so. I mean, it's people automatically look at your LinkedIn profile, so I think it's kind of redundant to put it on your resume.
Yeah, I'm in
I would
agreement.
not because
My view
I
is if they're getting a resume and you give them a LinkedIn profile, you've just given them a reason to leave the resume, to go and look at LinkedIn. And if your LinkedIn isn't up to date, some of the things we've talked about, I think that's a problem. That's why. And I don't know where the practice came from because to me, it's brand new. I don't think I ever put my LinkedIn profile on my resume when I was in the business of creating resumes for myself. And I do think it's an odd one. It's like a confused brain can't make a decision. And you're telling them to go and look at another document, even when they've got the one they need. This is the one you should be reading. Oh, I've got another one. You want to look at that too? So I just
yeah.
find that behavior bizarre. And I'm glad you agree with me because you're in this, you live and breathe it every day. So that's
Well, the
cool.
other thing about that too is the real estate on your resume is very valuable, because you want to keep it as condensed as possible, but as easy to read as possible. So
Yeah.
every line is valuable, every little space on your resume is valuable. So and people automatically look at your LinkedIn profile. You don't have to list it on there.
Here's something we were talking about in the green room, and maybe this applies to people who are experiencing not knowing where they are going to be going next in their career. Maybe you are stuck, frustrated, unfulfilled in where you currently are. Maybe you have been out of work in that 3, 6, 9, 12-month window, and you're thinking about what's next. And what's happening for you is that you're engaging in self-sabotaging behaviors alongside the daydreaming you're doing, because we know you're daydreaming about getting yourself to the right place, but there is some self-sabotage. So we talked about that before. So I'd love to hear, because I think this is so valuable, especially from men who don't like necessarily to always open up. And I'm going to be sharing my story with you as well here. What are the things that you think are taboo topics that maybe we can talk about here to help some of those people who are perhaps engaged in some less than attractive self-sabotage behavior right now?
The alcohol and the drugs, I can completely understand because I used to struggle with alcohol addiction in my past, and I got sober in February of 2013. So I just hit 11 years of sobriety, and I was a daily drinker. I drank every single day almost, and I was doing good in work in business and but I would justify that by I've worked hard today. I deserve a beer, but a beer wouldn't just be one beer. It would be, six beers and then going on to the liquor and then other things too. And ultimately I was really just miserable. And even though I was semi, successful in business, uh, personally, I was miserable and I wasn't comfortable in my own skin because I knew I had this issue and I had to get help, And the hardest thing was to ask for help, to put that ego, put that ego aside and say, listen, I got a problem and I need some help. I
Yeah.
think there's even a stigma today, about that kind of stuff and about addiction, but I can tell you after 11 years of sobriety, I mean, I thought I would never have fun again, and I'm having the most fun of my life. Um, got married in 2017, and we traveled the world, um, and you can have a great life sober. Like you don't need that crutch.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate you sharing, because I think about my last years of corporate life, of what it was like to be the employee, and really between kind of 2015 and 2019 up until my point of exit, and like to my jump off point of retiring from that, was almost daily drinking, not quite, but especially binge drinking to kind of numb the pain of my life at the weekend, thinking that that was my solution, that it would be found in the bottle of Sam Adams. Sorry, Sam Adams, but you were just my flavor then. And over and over, and I shared with you in the green room, I would come home, open the fridge, take a bottle out, pop the top off it, get halfway down that bottle before I even acknowledged my wife and my son. And when I woke up to that, it's kind of emotionally and raw. And I was glad that I was able to take control of that and completely change my relationship with alcohol now. Here we are I don't know, we're nearly in March, and I haven't drunk this year, and I don't know when I'll drink, and I don't care about not drinking. I've never said I'm kind of sober, or don't drink alcohol. There's going to be a celebration, and maybe I will have a glass of champagne to celebrate that. But what I did do is get to the point of, why am I even drinking? What is it for, really? And I kind of, when I do have that urge, is to think about, how am I going to feel afterwards? Will it have changed anything? And frequently the answer was always, it doesn't change anything. I don't feel any better for it. And so I was kind of like, let's just distance my relationship with that. And to the point now where, in my life, we have, drinking season, which is just, there's going to be holidays at the back end of the year where I will have less requirement to be working, and I'll be around family members more. And so that's a good time just to kind of limit the drinking to a very specified, scheduled time, So that's my experience. And I want to share that with people, that we're not here to tell you to stop drinking. We are telling you, what's your relationship with it, and why is that? And then also, how is it making you feel, not just in work, but your relationships and your health as well. And
Right.
you mentioned drugs there. Perhaps share, I don't know, is there a drug story to tell? I'd love to hear it, and then I'm happy to share some of mine too.
No, no, I mean, I was doing drugs, yes. I was able to stop them. Really, for me, it was the drinking. Because it's
Yeah,
so socially acceptable. And I find that I found for myself, I couldn't stop when I wanted to. I would just get off work and I would justify it by getting like a 24 ounce of Budweiser, and say, okay, this is one. But it could never just be that one beer. And then I would go and get the drugs after that, after I would drink or on the weekends, and justify it that way by saying it's the weekend. Ultimately, I was, running away instead of facing the issues that I was dealing
yeah.
with on the
That's
inside.
right. Yeah. And I have this little coaching framework I use where I talk about flow state, when you're forcing life, when you're self-sabotaging, and when you're daydreaming, and you're always in one of these places every single day, we can experience it. All I noticed about alcohol, drugs, addictions to pornography, those kind of things, that was the stuff that was all in self-sabotage, when I wasn't really being who I am. And I'm definitely, there's my thumb, definitely not working on my mission or taking action on the things that mattered most to me, like my family. Waking up to that was great. My brief drug story, I think I'll share it because I want people to see you are not alone. Mine is all in college age stuff. And I say this because some people manage to take the drugs on for some reason through their 20s, 30s, 40s. And I'm not saying that there wasn't a reason for that, but the biggest high I ever got from drugs was not being on drugs.
Yeah.
I think you've shared that same experience of the biggest high. You didn't think you were going to have any fun anymore, but sobriety is giving you more fun than you could ever imagined.
Right.
And I just think that's a really powerful message.
Because you can
What
actually feel like in sobriety, or without the drugs and the alcohol, you actually get to feel things. And sometimes,
that's okay.
you said, like living in your purpose, and like when I'm helping people, and I can actually feel like this is where I'm supposed to be, like this is what, faith, higher power or whatever, this is what I'm called to do. I'm called to help these people. You get this like feeling like that feels better than any drug that I've ever had.
That is great. I love that. I'm connected to a really good friend of mine. He has extreme faith and shares his faith all over LinkedIn every day, all day long. So you get to see that. But yes, I think that's important, that inspiration and faith and service for others is just so powerful. And I think these are three key lessons for people who are maybe not feeling awesome right now about where they are, knowing that if you can reconnect to those things, that's going to transform your outcomes. And David's living proof of that. And I know I've
Yeah.
been through those dark days too.
And bringing it back to the career and the resume, when when I feel better about myself on the inside, I show up to interviews and meetings in a better place, ultimately than I did before when I was drinking all the time because I don't have to hide anything.
Maybe tell us a little bit about were there tools, resources, accountability partners or groups or things that you were connected to that are still in existence? Clearly, I'm not always sure that recommending book after book after book is the right thing to do, but maybe was one thing that you were connected to at the time that you just went, this was a game changer. Is there a tool or a resource like that you could share?
Well, for me, I got into a 12-step, recovery program.
Yep.
And there's a 12-step recovery program for pretty much any addiction now. And so I would highly recommend getting involved in one of those with if you're going through any kind of addiction, check out those. But also, I mean, if you are involved in a big corporation now, a lot of them have EAP assistants, and you can go and talk with the people that are in charge of the employee assistance programs with your company, and they will help you. I mean, that's what they're there for. So
Yeah, I definitely took advantage of therapy through bereavement in my family. I lost my mom in 2009, but
mm.
I was working for a professional services firm back in the UK at the time. But that was vital, having those sessions with a therapy. But I do know that you could extend any of that to addiction too, and that there were assisted services. So if you're in those large companies that provide those services, even the mid-sized companies too, yeah, do take advantage. I agree with that. That's powerful. And maybe the reason why people don't is because they're worried about the privacy of that. Typically, that stuff is lock and key. It tends not to ever seep out. I've never heard anybody say, well, I shared all my information with the therapist. The next thing you know, it was on CNN. You know,
Yeah.
it tends not to happen, even though your fear tells you
Yeah.
it might. It isn't. So please, I don't think therapy and mental health is taboo at all anymore. And I do think talking to somebody about your challenges matters. Yeah. Cool. Okay. So where can we take this? Let's bring it back to professional things and tell us a little bit about, I like this concept of career jungle gym and not career ladder. And, off air, you told me a little bit about your journey, through the 2000s, 2010s up until this point. Perhaps tell people some of the things that kind of stand out to you when you look back. Steve Jobs has that quote about connecting green dots or connecting dots along the journey. What were some of the things that helped you navigate yourself into this position now where you're senior executive in a well-known organization in Texas here? So tell us a little bit about some of those things, and maybe that's a hook for other people to pick up on those clues.
Well, I think, not being able to just focus on one thing, like being open to considering opportunities, and not getting too comfortable in a current role. I mean, there are certain times when people have been at a company for 15, 20 years, which, it used to be okay, but you ultimately get paid more if you if you change. I mean, I'm not saying change jobs every 6 months or every year,
Yeah.
but you can get more if you, like, say it's been 5 or 7 or 10 years since you've made a change, then you can consider, if you've kind of topped off your career potential at your current role, then you might need to look outside of your organization to find a better opportunity. But just being open to it. And I know for me, like when I switched to healthcare, to real estate, I had to write out a pros and cons list. I talked to somebody about it, and I had to really contemplate about the making of the change. But ultimately, it was the right thing to do, and I'm glad I did it now, looking back.
Yeah, I love that little toolkit, pros and cons. Very often, it always answers the question. So that's a really good method for just aligning yourself back in center to make a decision fast so you can make the jump. So thank you for sharing that, because I think some people don't do that. They'll wrestle with the thoughts and not actually just take the pen and paper and write out the answer. And
Yes.
in the end, your gut instinct has that power. So was that a lot of it too? You think most of your decisions were from the gut, following that pros and cons experience?
Yes, I do. I mean, it was a gut instinct, and it was betting on myself too, to be successful in this new. And it's fearful changing industries or changing jobs. I mean, these are some of the biggest decisions we have to make. I mean, it's like buying a home or, going to the right school. These are huge decisions sometimes because like they can be 10-year decisions, and a part of it just has to go with your gut. And ultimately, I mean, we get all the facts and we get all the information, but we got to make the decision and go.
Yeah. Well, look, we can talk for hours on these things, but I like people to get 30 minutes of kind of solid gold. And I think we've come in really close to that. I want to ask a little bit about you as well, so people know a little bit more about personally what's driving you. So what is it in your life that lights you up? So if we got talking about that now, we could create a whole new podcast just on that topic. What's that? I mean, it could be obviously family, but there's some other things going on too.
Well, like I said, I mean, I do a lot of things in recovery and try to help people, that are struggling get sober and get on the right path. So I do that. I mean, that lights me up to see somebody go from addicted, miserable to happy, successful, comfortable in their own skin. That it's amazing. But also, I mean, I really do like helping people in the career field too. I mean, when they get the right job and they, message me back like, David, thank you so much for helping me get this job. I mean, it's like I said, I mean, it's like a drug. That feeling of, yes, I helped somebody, like I am useful. It's awesome. And so that's what kind of lights me up. I mean, honestly, like,
Perfect.
yes, the house and the kids and the wife, I love them to death. I love my family. I love traveling. But ultimately, that feeling of helping somebody is fantastic.
We got to stay close to the reasons. And, I have two reasons. I'm married with one son, and that's my real reason. Everything I do is about that and finding as much time for them as I possibly can. It's why I've changed my life dramatically for it. So I'm glad you brought that up. You brought up travel. So perhaps a hotspot. Where's a place that you've traveled to that you would advise anybody watching this? You must do this before you are no longer here. What's that?
Well, if you like hiking, you'd have to hike to this location, but it's in northern Arizona in the Grand Canyon. It's called Havasupai Falls. It's in you hike inside the Grand Canyon. It's an Indian reservation. They only give out so many reservations a day. I think it's like 300 a day. You have to camp 3 days in the Grand Canyon, but there's waterfalls. I mean, massive 80-foot waterfalls that come down, clear blue water. So you got this crystal clear water inside the Grand Canyon, red rock. It's a magical place.
It is wonderful you said that. One of my mentors did this, the 3-day camp, and
Yeah.
it just told me what an incredible experience it was. And now you've confirmed that too. So, hey, folks, time to get out to the Grand Canyon if you've not been there. And if you can't get one of the 300-day passes, just go to the Grand Canyon anyway. I've been there a couple of times. Phenomenal experience to see that. David, wonderful. We connected on LinkedIn recently. We've been having a to and fro messaging. It was wonderful to speak with you in the green room prior. I think everything you've shared with us today is extremely valuable. People are going to take a lot away from this. So thank you very much for your time. And I'm looking forward to continuing our relationship as well.
Well, thank you for doing this, James. It's been great
Cheers.
talking with you, and I appreciate you.
Bye-bye, everybody.